Good morning, everybody. Last time we spoke in a Swedish accent about why Dragunov is good, so this time we speak in a Russian accent about why Swedish Lars is bad. I'm just joking, I can't do a Russian accent, but I can play Lars. At least I used to be able to, back in the day when he was really good. And he's not that good anymore, and it's been bothering me. And some people have asked me, what happened to Lars? Why did he go from being such a good character in previous games to kind of weak in this one? And I never really had a great answer. I mean, what I usually say is that I think he was designed for being like a perfect protagonist of the very combo-focused, bound-based systems of Tekken 6 and Tekken Tag 2, and he kind of lost that niche a little bit when we went into Tekken 7. I don't think that's a good enough answer, though, especially because his combo game is still really good. His combo game is still good. He still gets good damage. He has the wall carry. He has the wall damage and everything. So it's not like the change to the combo system has really hurt him. So what gives? Why is he so much worse? Why doesn't he have any game? Why does he have to rely on his sex doll girlfriend to do all the ass kicking in this game? Well, I sat down with my notebook and thought about it, and then I went online and I played for a couple of hours, and I want to share with you sort of my thesis. And I like these videos where we do this because we tend to stray into interesting territory and explain some important concepts about the game. So let's see if we can unravel this. So the basic concept really that I want to start talking about to explain why I don't think Lars is very good anymore is the concept of game plan, or play style. Maybe play style is a better word for it. So let's give you a couple of examples so you know where I'm heading with this. Say, for example, that I'm playing Jack 7 right now, and I'm just in the neutral game, and I'm not reacting to anything specific that my opponent's doing. I'm not playing reactive Tekken. I'm just trying to play my basic neutral game. What am I doing? Well, it's very straightforward. I'm doing backdashes, and then I'm looking for a whiff punish with down for 2. And when I want to check my opponent with something, I do a 4-4-1 jackhammer, and if I get a hit, I can get some damage on the floor. If not, then I can keep on backdashing, and then I'm back to my neutral stuff. If I need to do a low, I've got down back 1 or full crouch down back 1, and it's a very simple, easy to understand package that creates a very good, solid game plan or solid playstyle strategy for Jack. If I'm playing Kazuya, I'm doing much of the same thing. I'm backdashing. I'm looking for opportunities with the electric. If I want to go in, I can do an axe kick. I can threaten my opponent with hell sweeps by crouch dashing. That's very solid as well. Easy to understand. Okay, say I'm playing Katarina. I have the best 11 frame counter hit move in Tekken, so I'm up here, I'm poking, I've got great mid pokes and stuff, and then I'm looking for an opportunity where my opponent's going to get anxious and press a button, and then I blow them up with the 4. I carry them to the wall, and because my down back 3 gives guaranteed damage at the wall, and that's a low, that empowers my mids, so I get a great mix up for the wall splat, and if I get the wall splat, I can usually close out the round. Katarina is a good example of a character that can play very defensively as well, because she has a good range on her hop kick for whiff punishment, and then out here she can do 4-4-3 or Toucan tail to put pressure on opponents from a range. Eliza, or Eliza, you create space, you can throw fireballs, you can do Moonglide mix-ups. When you're in here, you're trying to set up counter hit down 4. You can cancel out with your specials. So I can keep on giving you examples, but you kind of see where I'm getting with this. So the $1 million question is, I want you to answer right now, is what's Lars's game plan? What's his basic move pool? What's his small collection of great moves that complement each other perfectly, that he can rotate to create a sort of concrete base for his normal standard sort of neutral gameplay? And I would argue that he doesn't really have anything, and that's really why I think he doesn't function that well in this game. I went online with Lars, and even though I've played the character for like 10 years, I was like, okay, so what do I do? Usually what I end up doing when I play him is I run up and duck, or I try and stress my opponent out and try and make them make mistakes, and then I react to those mistakes, and then I create damage. But that's something that you can do with any character. It's not something that has anything special to do with Lars. It's just fundamental. So why doesn't Lars have a niche? Let's deep dive a little bit into this. So Like I said, he has good combos, but apart from that, does Lars have anything that he excels with? He actually does have one very big niche where I think he is exceptionally good. That doesn't work out for him, though, and I'm going to explain why. Because the niche that Lars has, the biggest sort of strength he has in his overall design, in my opinion, is his block punishment. He has far above average, really good block punishment. So you've got for 12 frames, you've got the very good 424, good damage, knockdown, wall splat, super important for him. For 14 frames, you get a launcher, which is rare. For 15 frames, you have a launcher as well, and then even more importantly, in my opinion, at 17 frames, you have the completely amazing back 3-4. And the range of this is absolutely amazing. Like, you wouldn't expect, like, from this range, that I could just easily, without moving, whiff punish Yoshimitsu with just a move, but you can because of back 3-4. And that means that you can block punish Death Fist, 4-4-2 from Kuma and Heihachi, 4-2-2 from Claudio, and moves like that. So he has great block punishment, but I don't think that works out for him. Biggest reason being that his most important block punisher by far, which is his 10 frame block punisher, isn't good. He's got 1-2 and he's got 2-1, and these are like below average in my opinion. They're just super standard jab strings. They give you nothing specific, and I think they're very standard and kind of sort of below average overall. This matters because, in my opinion, your 10 frame block punisher is something like 6 to 8 times more important than your like 14 frame block punisher, or even your 13 frame block punisher. And the reason for that is, if you're playing Tekken at a decently high level, think about how many times when you're playing against an opponent you respect, and you're playing real Tekken, you're moving around, you're ducking, you're having like a good game of Tekken. How many times is your opponent going to allow you to just standing block something that is launched punishable on block? It's extremely rare. It basically never happens unless it's a low. It happens all the times with lows, and so it's important to have good fast block punishment for while standing. But for up here, I don't really think it matters all that much. You use it for punishing rage arts, obviously, but you can use anything for that. So if you're gonna like paint Lars as a character who excels at block punishment, then his by far most important block punisher that he uses like the most isn't really that good. And then the only one that he really gets a lot of use of, in my opinion, is the 4-2-4, because while your opponent isn't going to allow you to block minus 13, 14, 15 frame stuff all that much, a lot of characters do have to use hop kicks, and you can get solid punishment on hop kicks with this move. But apart from that, your 10 frame is so much more important. I mean, look at Gigas. Gigas has nothing for 11, 12, 13, or 14. He basically has his 1-2, but it's an amazing 1-2, and he gets so much mileage out of that, and it's one of the reasons I actually think Gigas is a slightly better character than Lars in this game. He's still bad, but but he gets a lot of mileage out of his block punishment because his 10 frame block punisher is stellar. And then for 15 frames he has a launcher as well, and his happens to be better than Arc Blast, because I think Arc Blast is kind of dog shit in this game. And maybe we should explain that as well before we go any further, and to sort of tie this into my discussion about game plan. Why is Arc Blast dog shit? That's interesting. Well, let's consider Tekken Tag 2 for a moment. Tekken Tag 2, I feel like this move had more range. It actually used to feel like it sucked opponents into it, but I don't know if that's actually been nerfed or if it's just sort of my feel for the move that has changed. But sidestepping was better in Tekken Tag 2 than it is right now. And so what you could do with Lars was you could stand up here, harass them with pokes, and then sidestep Arc Blast. And because that was tag bufferable and led to very high damage combos, that was very dangerous. And so Arc Blast sort of worked in Tekken Tag 2. It was a signature move for Lars. What is it now? Well, it's a 15 frame block punisher that you don't get to use that much because you never block minus 15 stuff. You can't really use it for whiff punishment in my opinion, because I think the range is really bad. But when you do get the hit these days, I mean, the combo that you get off of it is not super high damage or anything. It's actually one of his weaker launchers. So what you get is a punishable 15 frame launcher that is just kind of meh overall. Like, if he could trade this in for just a standard safe down 4-2 mid launcher, or a hop kick that is 15 frames and punishable but actually gives you some low crush properties and some range, Lars would do that trade any day, because it's so much more powerful than this thing. This just looks flashy. It's a really bad launcher, in my opinion. So that doesn't really work anymore. So yeah, block punishment for Lars is theoretically something he's very good at, but it doesn't really work out as a package. And now let's move on and talk a little bit about playstyle. If you have a character who's really good at block punishment, you would want to play them in a kind of defensive playstyle. So much like when we talked about Jack and Kazuya earlier, you'd probably be doing a lot of backdashing like this, and you're looking for whiff punishing opportunities. And when you block something, you're putting on powerful block punishment. But Lars can't do this because, like I said, the 10 frame isn't good, and then his whiff punishment isn't good. I think his whiff punishment has actually suffered. My favorite whiff punisher with Lars previously was his up 4-3 lightning screw. This move has nerfed range in this game, as you can see right here. It doesn't really work for mid-range whiff punishment anymore, which is sad because I really like lightning screw. It's a powerful launcher. It looks cool. It's a little bit of a scrubby panic move, when people use it up here. But for a whiff punisher, it's really cool. It should work, but it doesn't because the range isn't good anymore. So what do you have instead? Well, the arc blast doesn't work. The orbital, in my opinion, is too slow, and so what are you left with? Nothing really. I mean, you have this thing. This is what they gave him. This also has stumpy range, in my opinion. Stumpier than it should be. It could have much more range than this and still be fine. But this leads to awkward combos because it spins on the on the first move. So you gotta do like shitty bootleg combos with it, and if you do get it blocked or miss or anything, they can just duck the second hit and then you get launched. This is not a good move at all, in my opinion, and so it's a very poor whiff punisher as well. So you can't really play all that defensively with Lars because your important block punishment doesn't work, and you don't have good whiff punishment. It's not like your backdash is super good or anything either. So compare that with like Kazuya has, theoretically the best whiff punisher in the game in his electric, super good 10 frame jab string with the knockdown and everything, and Lars just becomes extremely poor in terms of like spaced out game. And when he wants to go in on his opponent, he can't do like jackhammer stuff like Jack. Really what he's relegated to is doing slash kicks, and that's not because his slash kick is good or anything, it's just because it's all he has. He can do 4-1+2, which works, but it doesn't have great range, and it's not like super good or anything. Again, it's just because it's kind of what he has. And then so like what do you do when you're out here? It doesn't really come together as a threatening package. Even if you're trying to space your opponent out and play that game, usually most of the time your opponent actually has better stuff than you, and so they're actually, when you're like moving around and creating space, they can actually threaten you more than you can threaten them, and that's not good at all. Now, if we're trying to play like a more kind of like a Nina, Katarina, Law style kind of rush downy character up here, like so why doesn't that work for Lars? Well, first of all, I think your lows are piss poor. I think this low poke, I mean, you can do janky stuff like this, but it doesn't really have powerful mix-ups or anything mixed into it. And then the big lows you have are all kind of slowish and all very launch punishable, right? So that doesn't work. And then even more importantly, very importantly with Lars, is that he does not have fast counter hit stuff up here, and I think that's very important. If you think about Katarina, if you think about Law, they have super powerful counter hit and crush stuff they can use up here to stress people out, and Lars doesn't have that. He used to. His down 4-2 used to be a very good close-up counter hit tool, but they took it away and gave him this dog shit instead, and so you can't really keep up in the close-up game either, in my opinion. It's not like your jabs lead to mix-ups or anything. Your down forward one is decent, but it has a very high hitbox. Sometimes it actually gets high crushed, which is really weird. So you don't excel at defensive play, you don't excel at offensive play. What you do have for a counter move is this thing, which is decent, but it's not nearly as good as it had to be. It gives you 50 damage, which is not full combo damage. It doesn't give you any wall carry or anything like that, like a normal launcher would, and it's slow. Think about all the great characters who have great fast counter hit moves in this game. It's actually one of the major things about Tekken 7 that I think the gameplay focus has shifted to since Tekken 7 came out. Fast counter hit moves is such a big part of Tekken 7 right now, because of how the game has changed. And think about all the great moves. Okay, like 4-1 from Shaheen, standing 4 from Katarina, 4-2 from Jack, standing 4 from Kazumi. I mean, the list goes on and on. King, Miguel, all these characters who have fast counter hits up close. It's really important, and Lars doesn't really have anything except for this sort of slow, janky back 4. And that really hurts him as well. So, you know what gives? You have to rely on this down back 4, which is 21 frames, so sort of reactable, very launch punishable, and yeah. So Lars doesn't really excel at defensive play. He doesn't really excel at offensive play. He has kind of stumpy range overall, in my opinion, which is always bad. His 10-frame block punishment is poor, and it doesn't allow him to have this sort of comfortable, easy-to-understand strategy that he can fall back on when he's not doing something creative with the character, let's say. I think the developers know that this is a problem with Lars, and it's why they gave him this move. You probably didn't play Tekken 7 Vanilla, but Lars didn't have this move. This is something that came out quite recently in the history of Tekken 7, and it's like an intended buff for Lars. And what this is like it's dynamic 3, and it gives him plus frames on block. So they want to give him a big mid that gives him plus frames on block, allowing him to create offense from a spaced out position. Problem being that this move is kind of not good, because it comes out of this slow stance, and even when you get the plus frames, it's not like you have super solid mix-ups that you can apply. And so compare this to like another mid that you used to get in on your opponent and get plus frames. For example, running 2 from Dragunov or back 1 from Brian, and all of a sudden this move just looks completely laughable. It can't keep up with those moves whatsoever. It's not even close. So this doesn't really work, and that's why when you see high-level Lars players, the few that still exist, they don't really use this move all that much, because while I really appreciate the sentiment, because it feels like the developers understand what they need to fix about Lars, the implementation wasn't successful, and so it doesn't work. And so what are my opinions on what we could do to fix Lars? Because I think that's something that we really should do, because I have a lot of love for the character. He was my first main ever in Tekken. I think he looks great, better than he ever has in this version. And, he's like the protagonist of the series now, so he's going to keep on showing up. Well, there are two ideas that I have. First of all, you could give him better range on a very solid whiff punisher. For example, his lightning screw. Give that, you could make this much more heavy in terms of range, and then he'd have a solid whiff punisher. Maybe give him a more threatening 10-frame block punisher. Give him something faster here. There are a lot of characters who can do much better for 10 frames. Look at Lily, for example. Look at Gigas. Look at the Mishmas. Look at Kazumi. And then he has sort of this. You could give him something much more powerful here, and then all of a sudden you could play a kind of defensive Lars from out here. And that would be a potential playstyle for him. But I think he needs better 10-frame block punisher, and at the very least, and very importantly, better whiff punishment for that to work. Or the other idea I have is, if you're up here, you could give him back a fast counter hit move. You could make this move faster and just make it a counter hit launcher, like a real launcher, not this janky kind of like attack throw thing. That would make perfect sense. You could give him back his old down 4-2, which was a great move for him that I think he really needs right now. And then just give him, a very reliable, sort of semi-fast low poke that maybe gives him good stuff on counter hit, so he could keep up with countered stuff. Something like down back 4 from Miguel, I think, would be a great option. And then you could play Lars up here, and you could, capitalize on a lot of the cool mid stuff he has to be a sort of offensive rushdowny character. And I think that's really important. Really, what you're left with right now are a couple of scattered, decent moves, decent combo game, and block punishment that you don't get to use, and it doesn't create a package. Like, the best move you have, really, is your orbital. But if I'm going to be completely honest, while this is a safe mid-long range launcher, which is great, Josie has a better version of this. Shaheen has a better version of this. Brian has a much better version of this. I'd even argue, in a way, because of how it synergizes with other moves in the move list, that even Leo's orbital, that isn't even a normal hit launcher, is better than this. Your best move is completely outclassed, and you don't really have a niche to fit into. And that is my opinion on why Lars has sort of fallen out of favor in this game. But he hasn't really changed all that much, which means that there are just a couple of few small things you can do to really bring him back up to speed. And while I don't think he needs to be a super good character in the game, I would at least like for Lars to feel like a complete package and a mechanically well functioning character, so that people like me who really like him could have fun playing him online. And if you are one of those guys who are still using Lars, I mean, it's Tekken, you can do well with any character, and he's not he's not unable to function completely or anything, but I still think he definitely needs to be and deserves to be looked at so that we can enjoy Lars in the game again. Alright, I think that's going to wrap it up for this video. Very interested to hear your opinions on this, guys. We're going to do a character tutorial next, I think, so look forward to that. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again very soon.